Welcome back to Steve's Bees and nuke building. These are the nukes that I build fairly regularly, so I thought I'd actually make a video. The plan was to do it in real time, but it was too long, so this is an abridged version. So I've made the actual box, which is just the four sides, and now I'm screwing on the base. I use stainless steel screws and everything is glued together, so it's drilling the holes, countersinking those holes, and then popping in the screws, and the screws are really just to hold it while the glue goes off. This is a British Standard National nuke, which is unusual for me. They tend to be langstroth because that's what I use and that's what most of the people I know use, but this is a special order for somebody, so we're making a slightly strange size one, for me anyway. If you're interested in the dimensions or a cutting list, leave me a message and I'll sort that out for you. I'm going to put together a plan of how to build this. It's not my plan, it's based on somebody else's, and I've adapted it to suit my needs, and perhaps you can do the same. The material that I'm using here is 18mm softwood exterior ply. There's two reasons I use that. One is it's very cheap, and secondly, it does seem to be a lot more stable than most of the cheaper Far Eastern hardwood plies that are on the market. A sheet of this is about, at the time of the video, about 30 quid for an 8x4, which will make you up to 4 nukes. Pretty much everything you need can be cut from that sheet, which makes it pretty inexpensive. A little trick that I've picked up over the years is plywood often has voids and gaps, and that's a weakness which you want to sort out. So you'd fill those. I fill all of mine with beeswax. I either use old foundation or scrap foundation, or just beeswax as either sliced or grated. Just warm it up in my hands, push it into the holes, force it in there, allow it to cool again slightly, and then just go over the top with a light sanding, and you wouldn't know it was there, but it's flexible. So as the wood expands and contracts, so does the beeswax. It's waterproof and it's completely natural, and it won't do the bees any harm. I will just say that the stainless steel screws are expensive compared to sheridized or galvanized. I use them because you only need to do this once. Those stainless steel screws will probably outlast the timber. You won't have to change them, they won't go rusty, they won't cause you any problems. They'll just sit there doing their job, and that's why I buy them. I guess a box of these is about 10 or 12 pounds, and you'll get quite a few nukes from one box of stainless steel screws. The lid itself is slightly oversized, about 3mm or 1/8 of an inch, and that's just to allow you a little bit of rattle and run space so you can get the thing on and off. That'll become clear later on. Now, a bit of a confession here. All of this planing and sanding, this particular nuke is for a customer, so I'm going to make sure that it's finished as well as it can be. I don't want them getting splinters. I don't do this on my own. I just get a bit of medium sandpaper and run around the edges and anywhere I'm going to touch, just to avoid anything unpleasant. But I wouldn't normally go to the trouble of finishing one for myself this well. And you'll see over the next few minutes that I did put in quite a bit of extra effort to make sure that this one was good. If you do want a really good finish, then by all means you can run around with a box plane and some sandpaper. I don't usually use anything finer than 120 grit. It's plenty good enough for dealing with exterior grade plywood. You can go finer, you can get it down to a really smooth finish, and if you're going to paint it, that might be an idea, but I don't paint mine. Anyway, let's watch me planing and sanding for a bit. In fact, while I'm doing that, There's a couple of things worth mentioning now. If you want to finish this with something to protect it and enhance the grain of the wood, I would go with boiled linseed oil. Now that does contain metallic dryers, so you'd have to make sure it was not so much dry but cured, and that can take a few days. So if you were going to protect it and then use it straight away, I wouldn't use boiled linseed oil. I also use beeswax everywhere, and I've got a formula that I mix up, which you have to keep warm. But I use that on my hives, and it's brilliant. In fact, there'll be a separate video on that, and perhaps I'll do one of these NUCs in that finish. But it is a really good hard wearing finish, completely waterproof, and again it moves with the wood. And if you've got joints like mortise and tenon joints or dovetail joints or even comb joints, it's a really good idea to get plenty in there, and that will protect those joints from the weather. But that's another subject. I just thought while I was sanding and planing and generally being boring, I'd slip that little bit of information in. And again, just a note really, the landing board on this one is quite long. It's as per the original specification. I often cut mine a bit shorter. You can even make them longer if you want. But when I put together a plan, that'll be in there, and you'll be able to see that the options are available to make it longer, shorter, or even do away with it completely. This sanding is going on for a long time. Now, getting to the lid, it is quite important, I think, to chamfer the top edges of the lid and the front and back edges. I just find that makes everything work much better, and I prefer the look of it. I'll do the same with the front of the landing board. Again, that is just to stop it from getting knocked really, and presenting such a sharp edge. So although I don't do a great deal of planing and sanding on the ones for myself, I do this with the lids, and I do this with the front of the landing board. It doesn't have to be a plane either. You could do this just with a block and some sandpaper. This is just much quicker. That's all it is. It just saves some time. And time is an important factor, because as you can see, this is an 18-minute video, and this is only half the job. To be honest, 40 minutes to build a NUC from scratch isn't bad. You could do quite a few over the course of a day, and in time you get quicker, I suppose. But I just wanted to sort of show you the amount of work involved, which isn't as much as you might think, or it could be more than you may have thought, but at least you can see what I do, how long it takes, and the finished result. Back to work. If you're wondering why I'm not using a router, it's just because a router can make a real mess of this particular type of plywood. If there are voids or gaps inside it that you haven't seen, the router will just tear it up and probably ruin what you've done, and you'll need to start again. So by using hand tools, more control, if something does go wrong, it's not quite as bad. It can usually be saved and rectified. Okay, we're approaching the home straight for the lid at least, and actually once the lid's done, it's just the entrance hole and a few fancy bits and pieces. Again, the lid, I would sand the lid down. I would make sure that it was smooth, so anywhere that I was going to touch or grab hold of it, I wouldn't get a splinter. Just common sense really. And again, that's 120 grit sandpaper. Well, the lid fits. I think it's time just to finish it off. So it's going to need 2 more pieces of wood, which I'm going to cut from 1 piece of wood. I'm just going to measure that up quickly by eye using a template that I made earlier. This lid for the National is slightly different to the lid that I use for my langstroth, and it was actually a suggestion of a friend of mine, and I think I just might adopt it for everything. So again, it's going to be 2 holes, countersunk, stainless steel screws, and then glue to get the whole thing together. It's really important that you do pre-drill all of this plywood, because it just splits and crushes if you're not careful, and for the time it takes, it's definitely worth it. And again, it's countersunk, because countersunk screws will countersink themselves, but on ply they can cause all kinds of splits and damage, so it's much better just to run a countersink through the hole, make a nice neat job, and again save yourself some time and aggro. This countersink bit actually came as part of a set, I think, and the set that I'm using now doesn't have one, but I've kept the countersink bit. I've had it for years. It was probably something like a 10 or 15 pound set of drills, probably not Nikita, but some other brand, and they have been really good, but they're all gone now, and I'm just using the countersink. And it's definitely a worthwhile investment to have one of these. I always put a couple of turns on the screws before I even touch it with the driver, purely because again you can slip, you can drop the screw, you can scratch the work that you're actually working on. So those couple of turns just to start it, it's always worth doing. This is a waterproof PVA glue. Again, this isn't something that you want to sort of cut corners on. You want to buy decent glue. It's better to buy less of a more expensive glue than lots of cheap glue, because cheap glue is exactly that, cheap glue. It's not going to last. It may not even last a week. Once these 2 pieces of wood are attached, effectively you've got a NUC beehive. It's just a question of an entrance hole, and away you go. Now I put entrance closers on mine, but you don't have to. You can just drill a small hole close to the bottom, down by the landing board, and you're in business. But you'll see I actually put a larger hole in, and then I put on a disc with a restrictor, which I prefer, but you don't have to do that. I'm hoping actually that once that last piece of wood goes on, that I don't start the sanding process again, because that'll be another 10 minutes on the video. We'll see. Just off topic briefly, you see the beehive in the background there. That is actually the beeswax finish on that hive. It looks really nice. It's been sat there for a while now. It looks as good as new. Anyway, back to the matter in hand. Just about done with the lid now, and you'll see that that little bit of extra dimension to give it some space comes into play, and it's really worth doing. It just makes the lid so much easier to take on and off. Okay, this is the entrance hole. This is a 22mm flat wood bit. I've already measured the hole. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to buzz the hole through. I'm going to go most of the way through from the top and come around to the inside just to finish off, because I don't want to split out the wood inside the beehive. You'll see. So that's the entrance hole. It will need a bit of a sand off, and you'll see me do that in a minute. The whole point of that is it just gives the entrance closure on the front a nice flat surface to turn against, so it won't stick. Now they come in different colours. They're plastic. There are stainless steel ones too. I buy them in different colours because if you've got 2 or 3 NUCs in the same apiary, by having different colour entrances, the bees get an idea of where they've come from and where to go back to. That's the only reason I mess around with the colours. This is a white one because it's for a customer, and he probably hasn't got any others. If he needs different colours, then I can oblige. This is really the final stage. One other thing that I do, which isn't in the video, is that I stencil on a little bit on the front. I've always done that. I'll do the same with my hives. I just think it looks nice and people know it's one of my NUCs or one of my hives. I'll leave the entrance closure quite loose, so it just spins, and that's really easy to tighten up because it's only held in with a Phillips screw. You just give it a nip and you make it as stiff or as loose as you want it to be. So you can open it and tighten it right back, or you can close it and tighten it right back if you want to. But it's just if I set them tight, people might think they're supposed to be tight. If I set them loose, they may think it's supposed to be loose. There you go, free spinning. Now here's the point where I forgot that my tripod is actually too tall, so even if I lower it as low as it would go, you still don't get the full picture. So I'll have to pick it up and show you. Well, there it is. It's a tidy little NUC. It's made of substantial materials, so it should last a while. If you protect it from the elements, it'll probably last for many years to come. So if you want some dimensions or interested in plans, drop a comment and I'll get back to you. In the meantime, thanks for watching and please like and subscribe. See you all again soon.